The following video is an instructional guide for you as managers and how you are able to view your employees' timesheets along with editing them, and then also on how you would approve or deny any time off requests that you receive from your employees. So once you log into the system, you'll come up here to the upper left hand corner in which you will have your name, and you'll switch from employee view to your manager view. By doing so, your menus will change, and then you'll be brought over to the section here where if you click on time, it will give you the 5 options. By clicking on time card, this will list all the employees that you oversee. So for this example, my test manager oversees this test employee. So to view their timesheets, I would just click on the employee's name and it'll bring me to their timesheet. Now the default view of the timesheet is by pay period. However, you can change this to view the timesheets by their work week, which is from Sunday to Saturday, or by day. Just know that when you log out of the system and back in, it will divert back to the pay period view. So once we have viewed, once you're on the timesheet as a pay period view, you'll see here that the sections of time all have some different color variations. One is your holidays will always show in green. Any time off requests that have been submitted, whether they are pending or approved, will be in gray. Your normal work hours are in this light blue, and your lunch periods are noted in the dark blue, which also contain a fork and knife icon. Now, any sections of time that have a triangle and may be colored different other than the blue, that is an indication that there is a discrepancy with that time. So what you as a manager can do is simply take your mouse and hover over that section of time, and if we look at here on 219, we can see that the alert is noted as a missing punch, and it is noted as critical. Now, any critical alerts will prevent payroll from being processed, and the only critical alert that we have is a missing punch. So for any missing punches, which are also noted in red, just make sure that you want to have these resolved prior to the pay period being closed, as this again will prevent payroll from being processed. So to edit time or to add time onto a timesheet, for example, let's say this employee on 219 forgot to clock out for lunch and for the day. So if we know that the employee took lunch at 12, came back at 12:30 and left for the day at 5, you are going to add in 3 punches to that day. So anywhere on the day, you can simply click on there and it'll give you the 3 options: hour, punch, or cancel. Now, if there is already an existing punch on that day, you'll want to use the punch method for the rest of that entire day. So again, we'll choose punch, and if we know they left lunch at 12 p.m., you can enter 12P. You do not need to enter the colon in, as when you tab over, the system will automatically apply that colon for you. Next, under type, you'll always leave this as normal. You do not need to note when they left to lunch, when they came back for lunch. Just leave this as normal. For mode, you'll also leave this as auto. If I click on the drop down, you do not need to note this is when they clocked in or this is when they clocked out. Again, just leave this as auto. And then from here, you'll simply just hit save. So now any hours you enter in will be noted in gray until you've completed your edits. So on this day also, we need to put in the punch when they came back from lunch. And let's say they came back at 12:30. Now notice when I move my mouse on the left hand side, the hours will highlight. And if I were to stop around, let's say here at 1 where it's highlighted, and I click on that day and I choose punch, that time will be noted as 1. Now, however, you can override this. So for 12:30 p.m., I would just put 1230 and then P, tab over. Again, you'll leave the type as normal, the mode as auto, and then just hit save. And now let's say we know that the employee left at 5. So I'll hover over on this day, scroll down until my hour on the left hand side is highlighted at 5. And then now I can go ahead and click on here and choose punch, and my start time is noted as 5. Now again, I could click all the way here on top where it is, let's say 1 a.m., click on here on the day, choose punch, and is known as 1 a.m. However, I can go ahead and override that. So let's say he left at 5 p.m. So for a PM punch, just put 5 and then P, tab over. Again, type is normal, mode is auto, and then just hit save. Now once you've completed making your edits, adding your punches on the day or even the entire pay period, you'll come up here to the top where it says show results, and you can click on that, and that will basically save your edits and refresh your timesheet. And now we can see that missing punch on 219 is gone. Okay. So again, you can enter all of your edits for the entire pay period and then come up here and just hit show results once you've done making your edits. Now if you need to adjust a punch, what you can do is simply hover over this section of time, and if you click on it, it will present you with an in or out. So if I need to change this 8 a.m. to, let's say, 7:45 a.m., I could choose the in, and now I'll just put 7:45 I'll hit tab. Again, type is normal, mode is auto, simply hit save. And now again, that's in gray because we've hit the edit. Again, you can hit show results, or you can hit time card. They both do the same thing. It basically just refreshes and saves your edits. And now that time is now reflected as 7:45. Okay, so again, once you hover over a section of time, and if you click on it, this will present you with an in or out. So if you need to change the in punch or the out punch, you would just select either or. If you need to delete that section of time, you could use the trash can icon to the right. This icon here on the left is called our time allocation tool. By clicking on this, DMCD, I believe, is not going to be using these features at this time. However, what this allows you to do is basically cut up that time into sections and allocate it to like certain jobs or departments. But again, I do not believe DMCD is using this at this time. Let me just hit show results one more time. Now, another thing on this option here, when adding time, let's say if an employee forgot to enter in or punch in at all for the entire day and it's completely blank. So let's say here, for example, in 217, if let's say an employee worked from 8 to 5 and took a half-hour lunch. Essentially, what you can do is by clicking on the day, you can enter in 4 different punches. So when they came into work, when they left to lunch, when they came back from lunch, and when they left for the day. So again, you would enter 4 punches in that day. However, what you can do, again, if there's no punches existing on that day, you could use the hour method. And by choosing hour, you would then enter in 2-hour sections. So for example, on 219, you would enter in an 8 to 12 and then a 12:30 to 5. So for example, here on Sunday, if I choose hour, it'll allow me to enter in a start and end time. So again, this is in sections of time, not for the entire day. So again, if they started at 8 and I know that the employee left at 12 for lunch, I'll put 12P, leave the type as normal, and then hit save. And then if I knew they came back from lunch at 12:30, I'll hover on this day, choose hour, have my start time noted as when they came back from lunch being 12:30 p.m. And now you can either put in their end time, or let's say you knew that after lunch they worked 4.5 hours. What you can do is instead of trying to calculate what is that 4.5 hour end time, you can come down here to duration, put 4.5, and once I click off that, you'll see that the end time will now adjust to say 5 p.m. Okay, same thing, if I change this to 4, that end time will now shift to 4:30. And then you can go ahead and hit save. Now again, once you're done entering your hours or your punches, your edits, simply either click on show results or time card. Again, they both do the same thing, and that will refresh your timesheet. And now if we look on that Sunday, the hour has now been entered in. Now you'll see that some of these hours here, the lunches are 30 minutes. They are compressed, so it's a little bit hard to see what's noted on there. The default view here in the system by viewing the time are in 1 hour increments. By simply clicking on this magnifying glass, it'll now extend that timesheet to 30 minutes, and it basically just stretches out the timesheet, making it a little easier to see now. Unfortunately, just know that when you log out of the system and log back in, it will default 1 to the pay period view and by 1 hour increments. Down on this section, actually here on the top, we have some options here also. The verification. By clicking down this drop down, you'll see that as a manager, you have a manager box for you to check off of. Now, this verification of the timesheet is not required daily. It's once the pay period has ended. So for you as a manager, when you log in and if there are no discrepancies with the timesheets and you see that your employee did in fact verify their timesheets, and if they in fact did, this box would be checked off. And it also contained their username, which is their email, along with the time and date that they verified their timesheet. So this is for a way for you to know as a manager, did my employee in fact go into the system and view their timesheets. So if the employee did verify their timesheet and you are okay also with that decision, you as a manager can come up here and check the box. And what that will do is the system will capture your username along with the date and time that you as a manager verified the timesheet. Now, if a timesheet was verified by an employee and you as a manager come in and make any edits, it will unverify the employee's side. And the employee will receive an email stating your timesheet was unverified. So they don't prompt the employee for them to log back into the system and review their timesheet once more and re-verify. Also, if you as a manager check off the timesheet and if you make an edit, let's say I'll edit this day on 2/21. So right now it is verified, and I as a manager, if I come in here and if I edit this out punch, or actually let me see here, let's do this punch here on 2/20. If I change the out time to, let's say, 4:45 p.m., hit save, and if I hit show results, the timesheet will now become unverified. Okay, so for you, need to just come back in here and then just verify that timesheet again. Okay, so if you in fact verified a timesheet, then made some changes, the system will automatically unverify the timesheet. I'll come back to request time off. Next is time card report. By clicking on time card report, this basically just brings up another browser and it will present the timesheet in the PDF version if you as a manager need to print this out or whatnot. Just note that it's not required every week because you can go back to prior pay periods and print out or save these timesheets as needed. So again, it's not required once the pay period ends. If we look here to the left-hand side, we have the section here called Employee Absences. This allows you as a manager to, if you want to know how many days off or what days has your employees been off for a certain date range, you can come up here and run a particular date range. And then on the absence policy, you can leave this as all unless you click on the drop down and you want to see things more in particular only. Down below on status, you could leave this blank, again, unless you want to see maybe requests that are only been pending or approved. You can make these selections, or again, leave that blank and simply hit filter, and this will present all of the absences for that employee. Now down below here is a section where you as a manager can place an absence on behalf of your employee that will get automatically approved. So let's say if an employee called in sick, you would come again here to employee absences, click on add new. It will default to today, but however you can change this date however you need be. And then the absence policy, you'll simply select the absence and then the hours that they're off for that entire day. You'll note that as well. And then for the start time, if they're out for the entire day and let's say they usually start at 8:30 a.m., you want to note this being then as 8:30 a.m. These two boxes you'll want to leave unchecked if you did in fact check these while entering this in. One, if you check the first box, that means that these 8 hours would not go towards or reduce from their balance. This second box means that they will not get paid for this time off. So you want to make sure just to go ahead and leave these two boxes unchecked. Next, on comments, you can apply the comments that are necessary and then hit save. Now, once you hit save, because you've entered them in as a manager, you'll notice here now on top that that time is approved automatically. Now, this section also is to where you as a manager can also edit any approved time off requests. So if an employee, for example, submits a time off 2 months down the road, and they come back the next couple of days and says, you know what, I actually don't need to take that day off. And if you have already approved that absence, then you as a manager can come here, run that date range, and now for any approved time off requests, you have the ability to edit. So you can change the dates, policy hours, or you can even delete that request as long as it's approved. If I click down here on pending, you'll see that as a manager, I am unable to edit or delete that request. So if an employee submitted a request where they do not need to take that day off and the status is still pending, it'll fall back onto the employee to remove the request. All right, so again, employee absences was where you as a manager can edit, delete any approved requests, or even place a time off on behalf of your employee that will get automatically approved. Down below, next section is time off balances. Time off balances is just for information purposes only. This allows you to see how much time they have with regards to their birthday, floating holiday, sick, and vacation. So I'll let you know what their current balance is. Time off requests. Time off requests is similar to employee absences. However, for employee absences, you'll notice though that you can only enter in one day at a time. So if you do have an employee that calls in and they're going to be out for a couple of days, you can absolutely enter in each day one by one through this section. Or if you come over to time off request, and then this will show that employee's calendar, and if you click on request time off, this is where you can place an employee out for several days at one instance. So for the 1 day occurrences, do so through the employee absences. If it's more than, let's say, 2-3 days, you can come here to time off requests and then put in this time off on the employee for a date range. So this will allow you to, place employee off for the entire week. So you would just run the date range. Again, the start time, you would note as them being what usually they start in the day. If it's a half day and they're leaving off at 1 p.m., then you'd note this start time as being 1 p.m. And you'll notice here from the dates, depending on the date range I selected, these dates below will automatically check off in correspondence with the day. Next, hours per day for 5 days, you want to make sure that you note not 40 but 8 hours per day. As down below, you will see that the system will automatically calculate and let you know how much time that is for this entire date range. And then depending on what they have on their balance, it'll also let you know by requesting this time off, this is what the employee would be left with. Now again, you can put in the comments here, family emergency, and then simply hit save. Now once you hit save, again, because you've entered these in as a manager, these will automatically become approved. And should I need to delete, let's say, the 8th, I would simply come up here to employee absences, run the date range that would capture that absence. And now I can go ahead and select here on 3/8. Again, because it's approved, because I entered them in as a manager, I can simply hit delete. Next below is time off request admin. This calendar will present all of your employees that you oversee. And it will show any time off requests that have been approved, that are pending, and that are rejected. So there are 2 ways to approve or deny time off request. One is on this calendar, it'll note your employee's name, and you can simply click on the employee's name. You'll notice that anything that is pending is in blue, anything that is approved is in green. So to approve or deny, you can click on the employee's name, and it'll bring you up to this process screen. From here, you can select either you approve or reject it, and then you can simply hit process. Now, as soon as you hit process, the employee is going to receive an email, and it's going to state your decision, and it will say your time off request for 2/22 for vacation for 8 hours has been approved, or it has been denied. Okay, so once you hit process, this will now be removed, and the employee will now get that email. Now, if I were to click back on view list, if I had any other employees that submitted time requests, this will bring me back to the calendar. Now, the other way also to approve time off request is by clicking on this tab, pending requests. And this will list all of your employees, all the time off requests that are still pending, all the way down to the future months or for the year. And so from here, you can just simply then click on the employee's name, brings you back to this approve reject screen, and then again you make your decision, click process, and now that this request would now be removed. Okay, so again, by clicking on time off request admin, it'll still first bring you to your calendar view, where you can click on an individual name on the day and approve in that fashion, or you can just come to pending request tab, and it will provide you a list of all your employees that submitted time off request, and then you can basically click on their name and then approve or deny their request in that fashion. Now, earlier when we were on time card, you'll see that you also had this time off request option. This basically is the same feature by clicking on to here, by clicking on time off requests. So it's kind of like a little shortcut if you need to place some time off for your employee. You could do it from the timesheet by clicking on request time off. Brings you back to that menu where you select the absence policy, put in the dates, hours, and so forth. Now, when you are viewing your employees, if you have, let's say you oversee like 20 employees, you can use this left and right arrow to cycle through your employees, or you can click on this magnifying glass, type in their last name, and then they'll start to auto-populate. Or you can click on this 4-line view, which is the list, and by clicking on that, it'll present itself in the employee list. Now, one thing for as a manager as well, you notice that when you log in the system, you always need to switch from the employee view to a manager view. If you find to where you log in the system and you spend most of your time as a manager view, you are able to change the system settings under user preferences to where if I were to click on user preferences, now I can say that every time I log into the system, I want it to be as a manager view. And then when you need to switch or view as yourself, then you would switch back to the employee view. So if you find yourself using the manager view more often than your own personal employee view, you can make this change here. And again, that was under clicking on your name on the drop down, choosing user preferences, and then just choosing your default user role that you wish.